So my name is Hillary Green Nolan, and I'm located in Rhode Island, and I am an education researcher for Digital Promise. I lead research projects at Digital Promise, evaluating coaching and mentoring programs and programs that incorporate technology into teaching and learning. And I was a middle school humanities teacher for 4 years at first in the Boston area. Then I went and completed my PhD in Michigan in teaching and teacher education, and did research on, features of clinical preparation that prepare teachers well. My interest is really in the teaching profession. That's where my interest in AI comes in, is what are the implications for our need for teachers as AI proliferates into classrooms? How does the teacher's role change and hopefully not be erased? Anyway, then after I completed my PhD, I returned to teaching in Providence, Rhode Island for 2 years that actually coincided with the pandemic, which I'm really grateful for because I feel like post-pandemic teaching is no comparison to pre-pandemic teaching. And I learned a lot. So now I am going to turn it over to Judy to introduce herself, and then we'll go with Vidula and then with Julio.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're connecting from. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm Judy Fusco, and I'm the Director of Emerging Technology and Learning Sciences at Digital Promise. I've worked my whole career with teachers. I started off working with teachers, and I love working with teachers. I've spent a lot of time in classrooms working side by side. I also have taught in an EDD program for practitioners. And I learned more probably than they did. And that's a really beautiful thing. I mean, they all learned a lot and they're all wonderful people. And I just can't tell you how much that I think that it's important to have researchers and practitioners in conversation together. And that's one of the reasons I'm today. I'll pass it on to Vidula.
Thanks, Judy. Hi, everyone. I'm Vidula Plant, and I'm coming to you from Manchester, Massachusetts, which is where I've done most of my teaching and learning at the middle school level. I've been teaching for 26 years, but I taught at first in Ontario in Canada, and now I teach in Massachusetts, as I said. I've worked at the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade level. I've also worked to get myself national board certified and learn how to be the best possible teacher I can be for my students. I totally agree with Judy that the conversations around things that are out there where people who are developing or creating items are in conversation with teachers and students, it really yields to wonderful products and wonderful ways to use. So I'm super excited to be here to talk today and to listen and learn. Thanks so much. And I'll turn it over to Julio.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julio Vasquez, the Director of Instruction and Human Resources for the North Salem Central School District. We're located about an hour north of New York City, and we border Ridgefield, Connecticut. I started my career in New York City as a dual language elementary teacher in the city, and since then became an administrator in New York City and worked in the Newburgh and Large City School District, Wappingers, and now North Salem. This is my 8th year in the district in the role of Director of Instruction in HR. And I have to 100% agree with Vidula and Judy that the best part of our work is working with our teachers and with our students. And within my role, I do make it a point to constantly be in meetings and have conversations with our teachers in regard to our work with computational thinking and computer science. And we are very fortunate in North Salem that we've had a long-standing relationship with Digital Promise, because it is also that connection with outside organizations that enables us to do our work in a very informed manner and guided through research, not just practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so our first question, we're each going to think about, in our current roles, we're starting with the positives. What are some examples you've seen where AI is improving the experience of teachers and learners? So we're going to start with Judy on this one, and then go to Julio, and then Vidula.
I'm going to probably start a little higher level since I get to go first. And I forgot to say I've been in the role that I'm in. Well, I've been in the research and practitioner bridging role for about 25 years. So lots of time thinking about how we can work together. But back to the question about AI. So I've seen some emerging uses of AI in classrooms that hold promise, and these come from both the research world and the practitioner world. And before I get into specific examples, I want to mention some values that I think are really important to keep at the center of our discussion. First, Hillary was wondering, are we going to get rid of teachers? No, we are not going to get rid of teachers. No. We know that schools do so many different things for students, and we really need to ensure that humans stay at the heart of the system to support our teachers, to support our students as well. I mean, teachers and students as well. So there are so many different ways that the support happens in schools, and that has to stay as we go forward. Another value that I think is important to think about is, in addition to supporting the needs of students, I want to ensure that when we do bring technologies in, it is helping people learn. It's not just performing and making it look like we're doing good things. I want to know that we're actually getting systems that were designed with educators and researchers and tested before we put them into the classroom. I don't want systems that were designed by people who their only experience in classrooms were when they went through the system themselves. I don't want to design systems that automate bad pedagogical practices. So I really think that we have a lot of work to do together to get to the place that we need to be so that we can see lots and lots of good examples. And with all of that said, I'm going to say that my favorite kind, and this is also still high level, my favorite example of AI supporting students in classrooms is when a system, maybe it's a tutoring system, can really watch and understand what a student is doing, and then notice why a mistake is happening, and then probably alert the teacher. Maybe the system does some intervention, but maybe the system alerts the teacher in a way that's not overburdening to the teacher, and in a way then that the teacher can figure out how to address the problem. I really think that AI systems can do some things well, and teachers do a lot of other things well, and we need to think about that partnership. So that's pretty high level, but I'm gonna pass it off to Julio to see what he wants to say about this question.
So in order for me to be able to answer this question well, one of the components was really trying to figure out where our students and teachers were starting from, and not making assumptions about what they knew or didn't know. So something that was really happy that we did as a school district was we surveyed our teachers on specifically their understanding of AI, and more specifically ChatGPT type systems, and also our students. And I think what was super surprising to find is that it was a very small percentage of our teachers that really understood or were taking advantage of these systems in order to leverage their instruction. So we have about a very small school district, 120 teachers on staff K-12. And of that, 50% participated in the survey, and only 10% of those teachers were making use of these technologies and wanting to. And for many reasons, maybe they feared it, maybe they only saw it as a way for students to shortcut systems. And that led to trepidation and them pulling from it. But as we were analyzing the data as an instructional technology committee, we said, well, where are some bright spots in terms of how teachers are using this? And we were able to then combine that result with the information that we were learning about our students and how our students wanted to use this technology. And like, I know in New York City, they shut off the access to ChatGPT for some EdLaw 2D concerns. And for a moment, like we were going along the same veins that maybe we would do the same thing. But then we thought about it differently. We thought about it, yes, restricted for students, but create an open account that's owned by the school district that then is guided by the teacher for specific learning tasks that the teacher wants to focus on with the students, and begin to give the students access and guidance through that. So that's what we're piloting right now with our teachers, with a few teachers specifically at the high school level, and we hope to expand that. I will say that our first experimentation with ChatGPT was specifically developing lessons that integrated computational thinking across all subject areas. And our teachers didn't have a lot of experience with it. Language was a bit off-putting, and we worked with ChatGPT. We entered very specific searches, and we came up with sample lessons that integrated computational thinking in the arts, sciences, ELA, social studies. And we then, from those examples, shared them with our teachers. Our teachers analyzed the examples, and some of them thought, this is a lesson that I could turn around and do the next day. Others, though, thought, this has some good ideas, but I would tweak it and manipulate it in a different way in order to deliver that instruction to my students. So those have been our explorations, and we're looking forward to more.
Thank you. And Vidula.
Thank you so much. So I'm in complete agreement with Julio and Judy, who've talked about the importance of deliberate decision making, right? That's still going to be the role of the teacher, the administrator, the student who's making choices. AI will get us only so far, but there's a craft to teaching and learning that really cannot eliminate educators. So in my role, I'm going to talk about my role as teacher, but a little bit about my role as parent too, because I've encountered AI in helpful ways in both spaces. So one thing I think AI has done for me, and I've been looking for AI to do, is streamlining some of the tasks that have taken me longer. So like reducing time. So when I went for national board, one of my research education questions that I wrote about was, how can I use technology to help with formative assessment? And so for me, using AI ended up including things like using Edpuzzle, which would give me immediate feedback on what things kids got wrong. And to this day, using things like Blookit, which not only gives me feedback, but it lets me upload vocabulary games that then the kids can play in class with me, but also on their own. And I get feedback on how long they've been doing it, what questions they got wrong, where they struggled. So I consider that super helpful in collecting information. It's not the only information I use, but it's very, very helpful. And often when we're doing vocabulary terms, which require a certain level of repetition, things like Blookit give kids that extra dopamine, the reason to go back. They like the games, they like to be able to have it personalized. And so I've really benefited from that. At home, Alexa has been very helpful. I have a son who's ADHD, and being able to put routines into Alexa with reminders, have you packed up your backpack at the end of the day? Have you charged your Chromebook? Is your charged Chromebook in your backpack? Get up, whatever Alexa needs to say. That's sort of something that he can set for himself. And then he can set reminders. For us at home and in the classroom, some of my colleagues have used Alexa with timers, or reminders, like just remind me to XYZ. And so those are really time savers that are streamlining things that help teachers' days. In my work with Digital Learning Promise, I also sat on the Merlin Mind Advisory Committee. where they talked about a system called Symphony that could do that in the classroom. I won't talk about that yet now, because I think that bringing it to the classroom carries like some, I don't know, obstacles right now in terms of privacy concerns, but that's not what we're talking about right now. So I'm going to say that I have learned of Merlin's Mind. We didn't bring it into my classroom to try it. And then I want to talk about access, right, in terms of AI and the need to have multiple modes of being able to access and demonstrate learning as UDL principles, uphold. And so letting kids be able to access something through voice to text, or being able to have something read aloud to them, or stop something. I consider all of those AI features that we're using today. And we all know, again, like that push that they can't really replace a person. If we think about auto fill in or Grammarly, the feedback we get, we still need to make decisions about the feedback we're getting. It's not entirely, quite there. It doesn't replace a human, but it does increase some access opportunities. And I think there is definitely concern about privacy, which is why we do need to always, I think that's a delicate balance. You have to balance both of those. And then the third thing I'm going to say that I look to AI for, but I'm cautious about it, and I see a lot of school districts, including mine, being very cautious, is it does open up opportunities that we need to like monitor. But I have a friend who's working on building a Holocaust memorial in our town of Boston. And I was talking to her about coming in and speaking to my class in my project-based learning unit. The last unit we do is on kindness. And as part of kindness, we have to look at non-examples of kindness. And so we do study some of the Holocaust. We study other events in our history. And she was talking about trying to set up witness testimony that is interactive, where someone can walk into the museum and have a conversation with potentially a survivor. And what that looks like in the next few years, I think is going to be really interesting to see. And I'm going to say that, as a child who grew up with Holocaust survivors visiting my classroom, and knowing that those survivors are fewer and fewer with every year that passes, I really see a lot of opportunity to try to make things real for people that may be eventually looking on it just as history. Not to minimize history's importance, but like that, just make it more alive. So those are my thoughts about AI in my capacity as I encounter it.
Yeah, this is, we all think back to Vygotsky and the social mediation of learning. And, like we all agree that the hope is that AI will never replace teachers and could never replicate the craft of teaching. But the reality, we have to consider it's possible. Or at least for some students and in some places and in some situations. So the question here is how are relationships, how is that part that we think is so important to teaching, the mentoring, the social interactions that can't be replicated by an AI tool, where do those relationships come in as AI becomes more integrated? So this time we're going to start in practice with Vidula and work up to research with Judy. So Vidula, Julio, and then Judy.
All right, I'll be quick because I feel like I took too long before. So the relationship piece, I really think it comes down to knowing your kids and building that rapport with them, and then extending that rapport across grade levels of kids and outside to whatever kids use. So I see the future of relationships continuing with the teacher in the classroom, but I also would like to see students and their parents have some voice in how things are developed. I remain really concerned about privacy concerns specifically. And so I teach 6th grade students, for example. And so I'm not sure that I would want developers in talking directly to them, but I think ways where kids can give their input in terms of what they liked or something that they find glitchy. My kids do iReady, and there are a few things there that, you know, they're saying if the ELA had games, that would be exciting. Or, I mean, they have feedback to give. So I think that relationships that are circular, you know, like they build on each other. I see that as super important. And I see that, like, knowing your kids and having open doors with your parents too. I've been very lucky with National Board, even through COVID, I had 100% agree to have their kids videotaped. And I think that speaks to just having that trust relationship and keeping the communication open. Thank you.
And Julio.
Yeah, so I was going to say that I think, you know, there's such importance to modeling what we want to see in terms of the relationships between AI and student to student or student to teacher. And I think as a district level administrator, you really set the tone for that, right? So having the surveys is one thing, but then going further and having focus groups, which we have had with our teachers, to get more insights from them and how they feel comfortable, how we can help support them. And then you see that also play out with the teachers and the students. So we have our teachers who, you know, are willing to take a little bit more of a risk and go forward in using these technologies models. So the head of our English department, working with his AP English students, really, you know, he wrote out an essay and had ChatGPT do the same thing. And then, you know, he was like taking that risk, being vulnerable. And then he had the students analyze both and analyze what are the positives in each, what are, you know, some of the flaws, and what would you do differently, right? But there you have an adult guiding the conversation, really helping thinking. And in New York, we are fortunate that in addition to the computational thinking standards, you have computer science standards related to what are the ethical considerations of using technology. So therein, you need that conversation. You need that adult leading the way and having students think about things that they wouldn't normally think about or consider on their own. I know teachers in our fine and practical arts department talking about, you know, forgeries being done by AI, and then raising a level of consciousness with our students in terms of how that hurts human beings. And so posing those conversations, posing those questions, having ongoing conversations, I think that's the key, right? So this is a tool, but you need someone to help and lead and facilitate the use of the tool.
Mm-hmm. And Judy?
So, yeah. So one of the things that happened at the end of each last question, the last person was like, I 100% agree with everything my colleagues have said. And I absolutely 100% agree with what my colleagues online have said today. And I'm going to go back to something Julio was starting to discuss, is the leadership, the importance of the leadership to really model what we want to have happen in the classrooms and in this relationship with technology. And one of the things that I notice, there's a little bit of a fear of missing out, that we think that maybe if we aren't using technology, we're missing out on something really important, or our students are going to be missing out on something really important. And I want to say right now, today, I think there are things you could miss out on, but I think that that's not where you should be worried about. I think that we should be more worried about missing out on human connections today. And I think that we can take some of the work that Vidula was talking about and maybe offload some of those details to systems and always be involved. But I really want us to think about the importance of humans and being human and doing art and growing up and what all that means and all of the support that it takes. And I think that we really need to think about how we continue to value humans and not let the technology take over. And that is going to be our responsibility to, sometimes say no to the technology and yes to the people. And Vidula brought up, her own kid. I have 3, and one of the things that we say to each other when we're sucked into our technology is disconnect to reconnect. And it's kind of fun. It's a little joke we have in the family. And if somebody is too sucked in, it's disconnect to reconnect. And just having ways to remind people to be human is important, in my opinion.
And that's interesting to consider, that the technology is designed to be hard to disconnect from. And, in certain situations, you have more control over that decision. Anyway, probably not going to solve the whole problem today. Just raising questions.
Really rich discussions in my breakout room. I'm sure they were in each and every room. So now we have about 10 minutes left in our session together today. And I see we have 3 questions that folks wanted to bring forward to the panelists. So Hillary, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. So let's see, I'm seeing the first one here I think we can start with, which is, how do we advocate for continuous support in education to help teachers, students, and families navigate these changes? How can we advocate? Judy was mentioning before some of the power imbalances, or that might have been in a pre-conversation. How do we navigate that? How do we advocate for the people in the recipient positions? Does anyone want to start us off on that? Vidula? Oh, Vidula left. I think she had to return to teaching. So Julio or Judy.
So one of the components, I want to say I feel pretty lucky being in our state of New York, that you get a lot from the state education department in terms of wanting to provide equitable learning environments for all students, right? So we do survey all of our students, what technologies they have, and how they're able to access it. And then we provide families that lack that technology so that they have access to it. I think another component of it is that you have to be constantly communicating where you want to go with this technology, how you want to use it, how it's related back to your district's mission and what you want to do for all students. And presentations, we have like school districts that, haven't really explored these or started to ask those questions. And I think you just can't be afraid to ask the questions or provide forums for people to have these discussions. I think the greatest drawback is allowing ourselves to be overtaken by fear. And then because of that fear, limit opportunities for our students.
Thank you. Judy.
Yeah, I think it's really important. So when we're advocating, if we really understand the systems, and I know that's like, we already have too many things to do, but maybe there's some quick ways to learn more and learn about the dangers. And as Julio said, not be driven by fear, but to really come from a place of having learned, to then share with others and to know that as we are, one of the things we talked about in our room is, there's a need for all of these policies today. We can't do it today. We are going to have to take the time to develop them and have these conversations, have continued conversations. One of my roles at Digital Promise is working at the intersection between practitioners and research. And I'm going to share, we're having a summer conversation series around emerging technologies. AI is an emerging technology. And so I hope you can join and learn with other practitioners, other researchers to talk and think through some of these issues. And we're, in these conversations, there'll be chances to share with researchers, and researchers are not policymakers. So we need to bring in policymakers and we need to bring in developers as well, commercial developers, to be in these conversations. And learn from each other. And Stephanie put the link in for me, so thank you. There's another website that I'll give you a link to where we do this kind of work as well, because AI is here, but it's not done. And I think that one of the things that people sometimes get confused about is it looks really shiny and it looks like it's done, but it's not done. And we need to really try to redirect the way we want our society to be with AI. And that was the question. And I think that the power lies in our own selves and coming together to have these conversations. So I think I've talked enough.
Well, following up on that, so this question that we all considered about the potential impact on, our most marginalized, vulnerable students. So I see here that, there's the promise of what AI might do for kids with disabilities. I've also, there's also what it can do for English learners that I've been reading about. But a lot of people put comments here about access and perpetuating inequities. I liked what Judy said before about we don't want to automate bad pedagogy, which tends to fall on those students. So maybe we could end here with a couple minutes about what is the impact, good or bad, that you might see on these students, and what can we do to make sure that it's not going to go the way we don't want it to go? It's a big question.
It is a big question. I think one of the components is at a district level, really thinking about and deciding what is the outcome of the learning experience that you want for your students. So when they leave your system, your K-12 system, what should they be able to know and be able to do? And then how are you supporting all of the subgroups within your system to then reach those goals, right? So it's not a teacher working in isolation trying to figure all of these things out, but that guidance, that direction. We don't force our teachers to follow any prescriptive type lesson, but we do give our teachers parameters on what a lesson should include, how you're integrating our district best practices into those lessons. And then oversight, having visitations to the classroom, having conversations with that teacher, growing that relationship, right? It all comes back to that relationship. And not a mentality of we're out to get you, but we're out to support you, and we're out to support you because we want our students to be successful.
Thank you.
I don't know if you want me to add on. I know we're
go ahead. If you have a closing thought on anything, either on the students we're talking about or anything.
Well, I think that it is really important to understand learning in every situation with every type of student. And I don't think our AI systems do that yet. So I think that we really need to be thinking to ensure that we are not leaving any groups behind, that there are not any gaps that get wider. I do know of a system that was developed and is being tested, and they saw a gap getting wider. So they fortunately are researchers and said, whoa, let's figure this out. But I don't know if all developers think about that. So I think we need to really ask those hard questions. If a technology is coming in, say, did you test it with students like my students? And if the answer is no, then you're going to be testing it with the students who are your students. And do you want to do that? Or do you want, somebody, or do you want to say no, and then somebody else can really plan out the tests and figure out what is actually working and how, and if it's possible to make it work, or if it's not possible. So that's probably my closing thought, is that we do need to really think through all of the situations before we put it in.